Hello, and welcome to our weekly digital strategy chat brought to you by Denver Data Web. We are a digital strategy company. We help our clients overcome their unique challenges with a goals-focused approach to web development, web design, and digital marketing. My name is David Zonka. I am a digital strategist here with Denver Data Web. And with me also we have Sarah. And we also have Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin. I'm a web designer and developer here at Denver Data Web.
Great, thank you guys. And so we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic today. So anybody chiming in, feel free to post some questions, comments, things like that into the live stream, and we'll be looking at those. But our topic for today, so we're going to be talking about core web vitals. This is kind of a sort of a technical topic. But I think it's really, well, vital, right? Because we're going to learn a little bit about what Google's doing with search engine results and organic stuff like that, and how these things play into it. We're going to take kind of an overview of the topic, so we're not going to dive down, I would say, too deep into technical specifics. I think this is going to be a great overview for people who may not understand, what these things are. And so that'll be very helpful. And, I think a good place to start certainly would be what exactly are core web vitals, and, why would anybody care about that sort of thing? So, hey, Justin, why don't you take it away here? Huh?
Yeah, so Core Web Vitals is a new feature that has been added to Google Search Console by Google, and it was added, I'd say, about a year ago. And this is really the main focus of Core Web Vitals is to basically provide a user experience analysis of your site, and the whole purpose is to improve user experience across your site. The data that is reported inside of your Core Web Vitals is actually real-world data that is being recorded by Google, and it's basically gathered from Chrome, and it's from the Crux report. And this Crux report basically gathers these metrics about performance, how a user is using your site, how the site shifts, and it's actually just as they're visiting the site, so they don't even notice it's happening.
So let's unpack that a little bit. So first of all, Chrome. So when you say Chrome, I assume you're referring to like the Chrome web browser?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
I know I use that. Like, Sarah, what's your browser of choice these days? Web browser?
Always Chrome. Occasionally, I'll pull up Opera just if I need to compare two browsers. But yeah, always Chrome if I can.
Opera. That's a throwback.
Also, I must have had technical difficulties, so I'm Sarah Joswick.
It happens. Hey guys, this is a live stream, right? We roll with it. Whatever happens, no worries. So Crux report, that's something else you mentioned there. So my recollection is like is that like a Chrome user experience report?
Correct. Yes, the Chrome user experience report, and that, like I said, that is kind of ran as a user is visiting your site, and Google kind of uses I'm guessing, a data set of the visitors to get this report. And probably doesn't use every single visitors. It's anonymous, so they're probably doing some kind of algorithm that's basically segmenting these visitors and kind of pulling as much data as it can from the visits.
So knowing Google, I mean, Google's collecting this information. I feel like I see a lot of these disclaimers all over the place, the end user licensing agreements, terms of service, all kinds of stuff with these. They're collecting this data about how people are using the Chrome web browser to interact with websites and to collect additional data on their experience. I guess ultimately with the goal of helping people through the search results and how Google changes it, to understand what websites are best going to serve their needs, right? Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the things we learned is that this new initiative for Google here, and I'm looking at the announcement, is that they're going to be rolling out some changes coming out in a few months. So looking at May 2021, that they're going to be doing more with these user and these page experience signals to combine the core web vitals to these existing search signals that they've been looking at for a while. So like mobile friendliness, safe browsing, HTTPS security, and other kinds of factors like that, right? So why don't we talk a little bit more about what these these core vitals are, core web vitals, because I gather that there's just kind of like some specific components of that which Google is really talking about, right, Justin?
Yeah, and this is really exciting stuff because before you couldn't really get an idea of how are users experiencing my website, what's the user experience. This is something you can take real world data from users that are visiting your website and apply it and get some data and act on that data. So some of the things that we're actually going to be measuring and some of the things that are the metrics that are being measured inside of this core web vitals is the largest contentful paint. So this is the time it takes for a page's main content to load. So an ideal content paint would be around 2.5 seconds or faster. And this is how fast the web page actually appears on your screen. So I know we've all been to a website where we're sitting there and we're like, okay, I clicked the button. Where is what is going on? And then most of the time, you're probably going to hit that back button and not even let the page load if you've been sitting there for a lot longer than 10 seconds. So this is a huge one. If your website's not loading and not producing something on the screen for a user, they're more than likely to leave. So this is a great user experience metric to track and track per page also. The next one would be the first input delay, and this is the time it takes for a page to become interactive. So a user loads that page, it finally loads for you. How long is it before a user can actually click on the Learn More button or the Contact Us button, and it actually register that they have clicked that button and start loading the next page? So what we want to, the ideal for this is less than 100 milliseconds. That's super fast, and that's something that you probably wouldn't even notice as a person. You might notice a little bit, but these tools actually, we have a couple of tools inside of Chrome that allow you to measure this over milliseconds, so you can kind of determine what is causing these issues. So the last one is cumulative layout shift. So the layout of an unexpected layout shift or visual page content, this has happened so many times to me, mostly on mobile. As you're browsing maybe like one of your news sites and you're reading something and all of a sudden it just disappears. You're like, wait, where was I? Where was I reading? And then all of a sudden there's an ad on top of it or something like that. So these shifts in this page content is really what Google's looking for. They don't want this shift at all. And we're not going to touch on how you can change resolve these, but there are many ways and many methods for stopping that shift and increasing the content paint and input delay. So making it as fast as possible.
Justin, this one, the CLS, cumulative layout shift, it makes me think of those clickbait articles, or the articles that are going to give you the list of like celebrities without makeup or something. Like, who cares?
BuzzFeed.
But then you click it. What's up?
BuzzFeed, right? I mean,
yeah. But then you click into it, and I feel like it shifts around on purpose so that you purposefully click on ads. So articles like that, what is going to happen? They're still going to be out there, correct? But
yeah, so it's kind of interesting. What's going to happen is Google is going to start taking into consideration these three metrics, and these are the three metrics that you're going to be able to go into your Google Analytics, or not Google Analytics, pardon me, Google Search Console, and take a look at these metrics. So let's go ahead and pull up Google Search Console now.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I got a phone call, normally it's not me. So hey, you caught me, guys.
So when you're visiting your Google Search Console, and sorry, Sarah, what was exactly your question?
Oh, my question is, what is going to happen to those pages? My guess is that just their SEO is going to be affected poorly. The page will still be there. We can still click on it. We're just not going to be able to find it as easily.
Yeah, so exactly. So your rankings are going to diminish if you are having some issues on pages, any of these issues. And that's a good segment into how we can actually see these specific metrics inside of your Google Search Console. So and once you're inside of your Google Search Console, there's this menu on the left, and under Enhancements, you're going to see this new Core Web Vitals. Now, it's going to be broken into two different device types, mobile and desktop. Mobile is what they're going to be running for at all times. But if you do not have enough data for such one of the devices, it's basically going to say you don't have enough data. So mobile, we don't have enough data on this domain, but if we go down to desktop, you can see that we do have some data for some of the URLs to our site. And this gives you a pretty good report of, if you have poor URLs, URLs that just need improvement, or URLs that are looking good. You can click on Open Report, and this gives you a little bit more information. So you can click on Needs Improvement, and it'll actually give you details on what issue you're experiencing here. So we were just talking about that CLS issue. And we're not going to go too big of details, but there is a number associated with the CLS issues. And that kind of determines if it's a really poor, or if it needs improvement, or if it's if it's in good condition. So, and we can cover those in the future video. But if you can drill down into the URLs that are actually having issues. So you can see an example issue, or example URL that is having CLS issues is one of our blog posts for WP querying. And you can actually click on this, and it'll give you your average CLS for that page also, and any existing any similar URLs that are having similar issues with that.
So that's cool. So it makes it pretty easy to comprehend because it's this one issue, this one example, and then other pages that are showing that same very similar issue that may be easy to replicate the solution.
Exactly. Because what we're seeing as we're going through this now is that these issues that we're kind of resolving these poor URLs, and we can apply one update that fixes most of these pages. So yeah, keep an eye on them and make sure that you're keeping focus on the metrics that they're reporting here. And like I said, we can look in the future chat. We can talk about how to resolve those issues.
Cool.
That's great
so
stuff.
you go, David.
I was, had some thoughts there. We were just a short while ago, we're looking at ways to do some conversion optimization on some landing pages. Those are topics that we've covered in the past. And, one of the ideas that we were bouncing around is it's not a new one necessarily. It's, having, a contact form follow you as you scroll down a page to make sure that's always available. And, what occurred to us is like, well, Google's thinking about this stuff. So that's actually the layout, and the way the page look is kind of changing a little bit as you're there. And, what I've, in the past maybe would have considered, the pros and cons of, maybe they can help make sure people can fill out the form. Well, now we got to think, well, do we even want to consider doing that? Because is Google going to think like this is shifting layout and that's a bad thing? I'm wondering, is this going to be potentially one of the most impactful core updates that we've had in a while? This feels to me like this could be a big one.
That is what I was just talking about before this meeting. I think this is going to be one of the biggest shakeups of search engine rankings in a while. One thing that they're actually thinking or talking and testing is creating a visual indicator that goes next to every ranking in the search engine that basically gives a website a good user experience. So basically, there would be maybe a green checkbox that said this website has a good user experience. And the study that I've just read is that less than 15% of sites would actually qualify for a good user experience label that Google is going to be applying to the sites. So that's a little scary for some of these sites that have all these poor issues on their site that are ranking very well.
Yeah, I mean, within that amalgam of websites, you do have to consider that a lot of them are going to be these like one and done e-commerce sites that people put up that typically don't have very good user experience, that are going to be now ranking poorly or not having that visual indicator. So it does kind of make me think that if you do put the time and the effort into your site, becoming part of that 15% may not be as difficult as it sounds, because it sounds like a very low number.
Those types of sites you're talking about, Sarah, I always kind of thought of them, you're driving around town and you're stopped at a stoplight and you look out to the right and you see a little sign staked into the ground, and it says something like real estate investor looking for student. And it's like, here's a phone number here and call, make a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it just looks like somebody just like, scribbled it on there in marker. I remember talking to somebody and said, oh yeah, a lot of those actually aren't just, they're actually like mass produced. They look like somebody just went out there and put it, but I don't know, right? But really that's what some of these websites out there feel like to me. It's just like somebody's thrown it up there. They're going to catch some people. They're going to make some money, minimum investment in like putting it together and that sort of thing. And apparently it works. It's because that phenomenon still persists. And, I wonder, some of the drivers behind these things that Google does is, they keep. It seems like on some level, Google keeps trying to shape business practices and
Yeah.
marketing practices, and how people go about doing that stuff in a broader way across the web and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go, Justin.
No, go ahead. I was just agreeing.
You go, Sarah. Calling on you. What do you think about that?
No, I was just gonna say, as a self-proclaimed online shopaholic, I also noticed that a lot of those websites, you talking about being mass-produced, a lot of them I do find, if I'm looking for something specific and I am looking at different e-commerce sites, I notice some similarities between different sites selling the same thing. And I'm almost wondering if like the same company puts up multiple of those sites in order to just bring in more business. And it kind of goes off the subject of core web vitals, but I just thought that was an interesting point.
No, I bet you're probably onto something there.
I think it's very ever since when I was in school, they even said, a website is not something you build and just set it and forget it. It's something that you continuously build upon, and the world of web is always changing, and this is one of the biggest shakeups in the web. So this is kind of Google saying, hey, fix your websites, provide a good user experience for your visitors, and in return you'll get better conversions, better rankings, and all of it. So
Yeah,
one of the trends we've seen is like all these buildery tools out there. You have like Wix, who's like marketing all the time. I admit I didn't catch the Super Bowl this year. Oh no, I'm such a lame guy. But like, I feel like there's one point like Wix said like a Super Bowl commercial maybe or something. GoDaddy has builder tools. The idea is lower the barrier to entry for people to have compelling and interesting websites, right? Which is not a bad thing. I don't hate builder tools. You use the right tool for what your needs are based on what you can work with, right? But I feel like a lot of these tools are allowing people to do some more interesting things with the websites on their own, is creating this environment where there's more kind of like, really janky websites, right?
Yeah.
And you make a good point with these builders. A lot of these builders are running, they kind of try to fit every single scenario that they can. So in return, they have a lot of performance issues and a lot of layout shifting. So how are these builders, how are they going to accommodate these Google changes? It'll be very interesting to see what kind of changes come out of these. Even just WordPress builders such as Divi and stuff like that. We've seen performance issues with these guys in the past. So what kind of rankings are we going to see for sites that are built with builders?
Yeah, that's a good point. Kind of also what it makes me think of is a lot of the changes with the core web vitals remind me of the changes that came about with making websites ADA compliant also, like with making sure that stuff isn't moving around too fast, making sure that drop-down windows actually stay open. A lot of this, especially which one was it? The one about the cumulative layout shift. It reminds me of that. Like if you're clicking on something, you want to click on it. You don't want it to move or something like that.
Yeah,
That's really insightful. It's almost like Google may have accidentally started encouraging people to make really big improvements for accessibility.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what I was getting at.
I don't think Google's ever really been like, hey, I don't care about accessibility, because I feel like Google has always recognized that that's important. That's why the web content accessibility guidelines are a thing, and ADA compliance and all that sort of stuff really matters. Like I'm with you there. I mentioned we all are. It's really important to me too, and I think about those things a lot. And even if the back of my head I'm like, oh, there's probably just a small percentage of people that this would be an issue for, I still like to look at those and bring those things up, because everybody matters. Everybody's experience is important, and I do firmly believe, from a user experience standpoint, that it is possible to create compelling and interesting and engaging websites that do comply with web content accessibility guidelines. Because I feel like there's often this refrain amongst folks that are like, oh, I want the website to be looking cool and stuff, and if I can't do these things, like, yeah, I don't really believe that. But here you go, Google is looking at these things like those cumulative layout shift. That's the one you mentioned there, Sarah and Justin. I feel like when push comes to shove, a lot of people are probably been thinking, well, this can do all these really fancy, crazy animations and layouts and shifts like that, but maybe nobody's going to go to my website now. Now it's just like the pain is being brought into play, right? It's like, well, I didn't really care so much if it's only 1% of the population. If it's 100% of search users are going to think your website is not going to see it, well, there you go, man.
Yep.
Google,
Yeah.
changing society. I don't know what I think about
And
that.
even just as someone who gets headaches like me, having stuff move around and not be where I want it to be, it's really frustrating. It's not a good experience. So.
Yeah. I did want to mention, I think we skipped over this one, but so the Google Search Console does provide this information, but you can get this information, the scores and your metrics of your website from multiple different places, such as the Chrome Dev Tools, which is the what is it? Page Lighthouse is what is inside of Google Chrome, and then also Page Speed Insights. These will all give you your. You can run your website through that, through those tools, and they will give you your core web vitals and any information on how you can resolve those.
In my experience, I imagine like the Chrome Dev Tools. That's like when you're like on a page and you go up there and you go down to the menu and it's like more tools and then developer tools inside the browser. Is that what we're thinking of for that one?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
That's probably going to be really beneficial for people who are actually developers. And yeah, we got a comment here. Kim's chiming in. What if I see my website doing this? How? Okay, that's a great comment. So, what if I see my website doing this? How do I take care of it? Well, that is a great question. My thinking is we're going to want to kind of dive into that more fully. That's a whole another session probably, and a whole other video chat. That's a great, and thank you for bringing that up, Ken, because we definitely want to. So we've kind of talked a little bit here about how do I kind of assess, right? We got these tools like the developer tools Justin just mentioned, PageSpeed Insights. So that's a great one. I think that's a little more kind of user friendly for maybe like laypersons who aren't too technically savvy. You can do a Google search for PageSpeed Insights, and I think PageSpeed might be
very easy to use tool that's accessible to anyone.
Yeah, that's a good one, and that's a Google thing, right? So that's great, and so you're kind of seeing, what's going on with that. Now, how do I take care of it? Kim asks. And this is a question. That's the $1 million question, right? Well, hopefully not $1 million to fix it.
It really depends. So I'm going to answer it. It really depends on what is causing the issues. It could be how your fonts are being loaded. It could be how your images are being included in the page. It could be like so many different things that there's a list of things that we can kind of go through that you can take a look at to make sure. But your Google Search Console isn't going to tell you much. Your PageSpeed Insights is probably going to be your best bet to find where those shifts are happening.
I think we're gonna have like a session that's going to follow up from this one. I think, Sarah, that maybe even try and put this one on next week, for our next digital strategy chat, and really devote to a whole conversation about, all right, so web core vitals, this is coming. You've used PageSpeed Insights. You've got some intuition here that you could have some problems, and you're worried about it. Is this going to impact me in the next couple of months? What can I do about this? I think we're going to want to try and dive into that, some things. My intuition, and Sarah, Justin, let me get your kind of take on this, is that some of these, depending on how your website is set up, could involve a web developer potentially, right? I mean, certainly there's as many different types of ways to build a website as there are grains of sand on a beach, but some of these things that we're talking about, they seem very technical. You're assessing like how quickly the page loads, and we've helped a lot of different companies with this sort of stuff, right? I mean, we're pretty well versed with this at Different Data Web. We get requests like, hey, my website isn't loading very fast. I want to do something about this. And we've been helping people with that for years now. It's going to be even more important than it was before, but oftentimes those things that we're helping them do, we're analyzing the specifics on what are the particular things on the website are causing it to load slowly. Is it this big image on the front page? Is it this plugin you're using here that's just taking a long time to phone home to some kind of third-party service? Am I off base, Justin? Sarah, do you think like it could mostly be developers involved, or some of these things people might be able to handle on their own, and maybe we can talk about some of that in the future?
Well, I think diagnosing it is one thing, but yeah, definitely acting on it is not necessarily as intuitive. I think a lot of these issues that we're seeing they're very intuitive to see. They are very common sense user experience um, pieces, but diagnosing them is one thing, but acting on them is quite another. So I do definitely think that the development standpoint or hiring a developer to help is necessary in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. A lot of this stuff has to do with how code is written. For example, if you're including Google Fonts into your, just an example, into your site, you want to preload those fonts, and that helps prevent the layout shifting. So Google does halfway through the font load, you don't have Arial, and then all of a sudden you switch to Lato. So a lot of it is very technical, like including width and height for all of your images, stuff like that. Those are just some small examples, but yes, it is going to include some development work for doing these.
Most likely. Maybe even, as user-friendly as PageSpeed Insights, and sometimes you get these recommendations from Google. And I recall somewhere you like preloading external files like font files. I remember seeing that on a client's one recently. And sometimes folks who aren't overly technical, they're like, all right, well, that's great. What do I do with this? How do I make sense of that? And sometimes those little things have a big impact. I remember in a project some time ago, typography.com was being used to bring in some special fonts, from cloud service, right? And it turned out for that one, it was a huge bottleneck. That all that stuff had to be brought in as part of the loading process before anything else. And so when we talk about the first contentful paint of the website is what this term is, right, Justin? And like this layout stuff. So like it's all loading in and kind of sequentially, and then it's taken a while, first of all, to get it because it's phoning home to some other service to get that font. And then it starts loading it in, and then it starts shifting. That sounds like what you're describing is it gets the design elements in there, and right? It's all kind of piecing together.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just ignore that stuff anymore, right? We don't like it anyway, but now it's going to matter even more than it did before, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
and
folks,
it's going to matter to everyone, not just the people who notice it.
Everyone.
Everyone.
It's going to matter to everyone. Yeah. So definitely tune in for our next digital strategy next week. We're gonna work through some of those concepts, a little more detail on some of the technical side on what Web Core Vitals means to you, and we covered that in an overview today. But we're gonna dive into a little bit more in an upcoming chat, give some more insights onto that and how sometimes more examples of how this might play out, what people might be seeing, and what you can start to think about what that means to you, what you might be able to do about that. I think it's going to be a very valuable topic, and that's all coming months from now. Middle of this year, we're going to see these changes. So be sure to tune in to our next digital strategy chat. It is every week on Fridays, 11:30 Mountain Standard Time. We're live streaming this to YouTube, Facebook, all those places. You can find Denver Data Web, of course, at those locations on social media. Be sure to like and subscribe so you get notifications on when we have our next digital strategy chat. You can register for that and get notified when it's coming online. And also check out our website at denverdata.com. We've got a lot of helpful resources there. Additionally, little snippets from these videos and tutorials on how to make sense of these complex digital strategy topics. And do yourself a favor and get it all set up in a way that's going to give you great success online. So thank you all to everybody who attended today, and we'll see you next time.